There are places in Pennsylvania that don't show up on travel guides. No tourists, no crowds, just empty streets, collapsing buildings, and stories no one talks about anymore. These towns once had schools, stores, families, life, but something changed. And one by one, people left. Now, all that's left are ruins hidden in the woods, and echoes of a past that refuses to die. In this video, we'll explore 13 of the most mysterious ghost towns in Pennsylvania you won't believe still exist. And when we reach number 1, you'll understand why some places are meant to be forgotten. Number 13. Loausanne Landing. Before there were highways, factories, or even many towns in Pennsylvania, there was Loausanne Landing. Hidden where the Nesquehoning Creek meets the Lehigh River, Loausanne was once a busy riverfront village in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Back then, it was a crucial stop for travelers, loggers, and coal haulers. It had a tavern, trading posts, a boat landing, even a jail. It was one of the first real settlements in what would later become Carbon County. But today, there are no roads leading in, no signs, no buildings, just ruins quietly sinking into the forest floor. Loausanne Landing faded away before most towns were even born. As transportation methods improved and canals and railroads took over, the village lost its purpose. By the mid-1800s, it was nearly empty, and now nature has taken it all back. You can still find it if you're willing to hike through thick woods, follow old maps, and trace the bends of the river. Look closely, and you might spot crumbling stone walls, parts of old foundations, and even weather-worn cellar holes covered in moss. But what makes Loausanne so mysterious isn't just how old it is, it's how completely it's disappeared. There are almost no records, no photographs, no real proof that hundreds of people once lived and worked here. It's like the land swallowed it whole. Number 12. Yellow Dog Village. Tucked deep in the hills of Armstrong County, Yellow Dog Village doesn't look like your typical ghost town. In fact, the houses are still standing. Rows of homes, driveways, street signs, all frozen in time. This isn't some Wild West ruin or coal-era relic. Yellow Dog was a modern village, built in the 1900s for workers at a nearby limestone company. For decades, it was a quiet, working-class community. Families lived here. Kids played in the yards. It looked like any small Pennsylvania neighborhood. Then, something went wrong. By the early 2000s, a water contamination issue made the homes unsafe to live in. One by one, residents left. Doors were locked, windows were boarded up, and the entire village was left to decay. But here's what makes Yellow Dog so eerie. Everything still looks almost normal. Unlike other ghost towns that have been torn down or buried by forest, Yellow Dog feels like its people just vanished. Lawns are overgrown, mailboxes still hang by front doors, and furniture remains in some of the houses. Today, it's private property and only accessible by permission or guided tours. Visitors often describe it as creepy, not because it's full of ruins, but because it's not. It's too intact, too recent, like time just stopped. What's left is a ghost town that doesn't look like a ghost town, and that's what makes it so haunting. Number 11. Petroleum Center. Tucked inside Oil Creek State Park in Venango County, Petroleum Center was once a booming town at the heart of Pennsylvania's oil rush. In the 1860s, oil was discovered here, and almost overnight, the area turned into a wild frontier of drilling rigs, saloons, hotels, and chaos. They called it the town that oil built. At its peak, Petroleum Center had over 3,000 residents. Fortune seekers poured in, trying to strike it rich. There were opera houses, churches, and even a post office that handled more mail than some major cities. For a while, it seemed like the town would become a permanent fixture on the map. But oil towns like this were built fast, and they collapsed just as quickly. By the early 1870s, the wells began to dry up. Fires, spills, and economic crashes pushed people away. And in just a few short years, the once bustling town became a ghost. Today, almost nothing remains of Petroleum Center. If you visit the area, you'll find a few foundations, some interpretive signs, and quiet walking trails through what used to be streets filled with noise and ambition. The strange part? For a town that burned so brightly, it left behind barely a shadow. It's one of those places where the silence feels heavy, like the land itself remembers everything that happened here, even if no one else does. Number 10. Rousgap. Deep in the heart of St. Anthony's Wilderness in Lebanon County lies a place you won't stumble upon unless you're truly looking for it: Rousgap. Back in the mid-1800s, Rousgap was a small but thriving railroad town, built to support the Union Canal and the Lebanon Valley Railroad. It had homes, a school, a church, and even a post office. Workers and their families lived here, tucked into the forest, surrounded by hills and coal seams. But life wasn't easy. The soil wasn't good for farming, and it was tough to grow food. Supplies had to be brought in by train. As rail lines expanded elsewhere and coal demand shifted, Rousgap lost its importance. By the early 1900s, the trains stopped coming, the jobs vanished, and the families packed up and left. Today, the forest has taken over. If you hike the Appalachian Trail through this area, you'll come across cracked stone foundations, old stone walls, and rusted rail remnants quietly being swallowed by moss and trees. There's even an old cemetery with worn gravestones, the only real reminder that this place was once full of life. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let us know which video you want to see next. Now let's move to our next ghost town. Number 9. Burnsville. Hidden in the shadow of the broad mountain near Ashland, there once was a town called Burnsville. Most people have never heard of it, and if you drive past today, you probably wouldn't even notice it was ever there. Burnsville was a tiny coal patch town, one of many built during Pennsylvania's anthracite coal boom. It housed workers and families who labored in the nearby mines. Back then, it had rows of company houses, a store, and a strong sense of community. Life was tough, but the town thrived in its own quiet way. But like many coal towns, Burnsville's fate was tied to the mines. And when the coal industry started to collapse, so did the town. One by one, homes were abandoned. The school closed, families moved away, and slowly, Burnsville disappeared, erased from most maps, forgotten in local history. Today, almost nothing remains. No standing buildings, no bustling streets, just a few scattered stone foundations hidden beneath the brush. Number 8. Alvara. Alvara was never supposed to disappear. In fact, it was a peaceful, tight-knit town in Union County, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other, kids played in the fields, and Sundays were quiet. But then came World War II, and everything changed. In the early 1940s, the US government needed land to build a massive explosives factory. They chose Alvara, and without much warning, the entire town was bought out. Homes, farms, churches, even cemeteries, all taken under eminent domain. Families were forced to pack up and leave, often with little time or choice. The town was flattened to make way for what became the Susquehanna Ordnance Depot, a sprawling site used to store and manufacture TNT and other weapons for the war effort. Massive concrete bunkers were built and scattered across the landscape, hidden under grassy hills and tucked into the trees. But here's the strange part. The war ended, the factory shut down, and the town was never returned. Alvara was erased from the map, but not completely. Today, if you explore the area, now part of the state game lands, you can still find pieces of the past. Crumbling foundations where homes once stood. Overgrown streets that lead nowhere. Dozens of concrete bunkers, sealed shut and covered in moss. Even the town cemetery remains, with headstones quietly standing among the trees, long after the town around them vanished. Number 7. Ficks Lock. Ficks Lock is one of the eeriest places in all of Chester County. Not because it's falling apart, but because it's so perfectly preserved, and so completely empty. This ghost town dates back to the early 1800s, when it was built along the Schuylkill Canal. At the time, canals were the superhighways of Pennsylvania. Ficks Lock thrived as a stopover point for goods and travelers moving between coal country and Philadelphia. There were homes, barns, blacksmith shops, and businesses, all built close to the water. But as railroads took over and the canal system declined, towns like Ficks Lock lost their purpose. People moved away. The village shrank. By the 20th century, only a few families remained. Then, in the 1960s and 70s, the area changed again. This time because of the nearby Limerick nuclear power plant. As the plant expanded, the remaining residents were bought out, and the town was officially abandoned. The houses were boarded up, but not demolished. That's what makes Ficks Lock so strange today. The buildings are still there, lined up along narrow lanes, surrounded by trees and silence. Some homes still have shutters on the windows. The general store still stands. It feels like a movie set for a ghost story, except it's real. The village is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and tours are available by appointment, but you can't just walk in. It's gated and protected, which adds to the mystery. Why preserve a ghost town so carefully, yet keep it so hidden? Number 6. Wehrum. Tucked along the Ghost Town Trail in Indiana County lies what little remains of a town that once held big dreams. Built in 1901 by the Lacquin Iron and Steel Company, Wehrum wasn't just another mining camp. It was a full-blown company town designed to last. At its peak, Wehrum had over 200 homes, a hotel, a jail, a post office, a church, and even its own movie theater. Families moved here for steady work in the nearby coal mines, and for a while, it worked. The town buzzed with life. Trains rolled through, kids played in the streets, and the promise of the coal industry kept things going strong. But coal towns in Pennsylvania rarely got happy endings. By the late 1920s, the mine's output declined. Profits fell. Then came 1929, the Great Depression, and everything collapsed. The company pulled out, workers were laid off, and one by one, the families left. By 1934, Wehrum was completely abandoned. Today, most of it is gone. There are no standing buildings, no downtown left to explore. But if you follow the Ghost Town Trail, you'll find stone foundations hidden under the brush, an old railroad bridge, and a cemetery still standing, eerily intact, watching over the silence. Number 5. Peele. If you wander through the woods near Grassflat in Clearfield County, you might stumble upon Peele, a ghost town that almost no one remembers, yet once had over 2,500 people living in it. Peele was founded in the 1880s by the Beech Creek Coal and Coke Company as a company town for coal miners. Everything was built fast and with purpose. Rows of identical wooden houses, a general store, a church, schools, even a theater. The entire town was designed to keep the workers close to the mines and completely dependent on the company. It was remote, but it worked, at least for a while. Coal was booming, and Peele thrived for a short time. Trains constantly hauled coal out of the valley, and the streets echoed with the sounds of work and life. But by the early 1900s, the coal seams began to run thin, and just like that, the town's purpose vanished. Today, nature has reclaimed almost everything. You won't find standing buildings, but if you explore the area, you'll come across broken bricks, collapsed foundations, and the overgrown path where the old rail line once ran. Some old stone walls and the outline of streets are still visible under layers of moss and fallen leaves. But what makes Peele so mysterious is how completely it's been forgotten. There are no signs pointing you there, no tourist markers, no guided tours. It's just a name on old maps and a scattering of ruins hidden deep in the trees. Number 4. Scotia. Just outside State College, hidden in the shadow of Penn State University, lies the remains of a town that once played a key role in Pennsylvania's iron industry, a place called Scotia. Today, most people pass through the area without realizing that an entire town once stood here, built around the booming iron ore business in the late 1800s. Scotia was founded by industrialist Andrew Carnegie, who needed a steady supply of iron ore for his steel operations. He had massive pits dug into the earth and created a company town to house the workers. For years, the town was alive with activity. Trains constantly moved ore, and families built their lives around the industry. But it didn't last. As richer iron sources were discovered elsewhere, and the cost of transporting ore from Scotia became too high, the mines were shut down. By the early 20th century, the town began to empty out. Buildings were torn down, equipment was left behind, and nature started to take back what was once hers. Today, what remains of Scotia is scattered across a quiet forest known as Scotia Barrens. Hikers and history buffs can still find hints of the old mining pits, bits of iron rail, and even some concrete ruins. It's an eerie place, silent, overgrown, and full of forgotten history. There's something strange about walking through this ghost town's remains while knowing how vital it once was. Scotia's story is one of boom and bust, and how quickly even a Carnegie-backed town can disappear without a trace. Number 3. Cold Spring. Tucked deep in the mountains of Lebanon County, Cold Spring is one of those ghost towns that almost feels like a myth. At one point in the 1800s, it was a popular summer resort, a quiet escape built around natural springs, where wealthy guests came to enjoy the fresh mountain air and healing waters. The town featured a hotel, several homes, a church, and even a train station to bring visitors in. During its peak, people believed the mineral springs had health benefits, attracting guests from cities like Philadelphia and Harrisburg. It was peaceful, scenic, and remote, everything you'd want in a mountain retreat. But Cold Spring's success didn't last. The hotel eventually burned down, the railroad stopped service to the town, and slowly, everyone left. There was no major tragedy or disaster, just time quietly moving on. Today, very little remains. The buildings are gone, but stone foundations, abandoned wells, and rusted debris still dot the forest. You can find it deep within St. Anthony's wilderness, but only if you know exactly where to look. There are no signs or marked trails, just old paths hidden beneath trees and overgrowth. Hiking to Cold Spring feels more like uncovering a secret than visiting a tourist site. It's quiet, it's remote, and it carries that strange stillness that only ghost towns seem to have. For those who make the journey, it's a haunting reminder of how quickly entire communities can vanish into the woods. Number 2. Lacquin. In the far reaches of Bradford County, deep in the heart of the Endless Mountains, lies the forgotten town of Lacquin. Once a booming logging town in the early 1900s, Lacquin was built for one purpose: to harvest the vast forests of northern Pennsylvania. At its peak, over 500 people lived here: workers, families, and mill operators. The town had everything: homes, a school, stores, even a hotel. A massive sawmill operated day and night, cutting down endless rows of timber. The town was alive with steam whistles, wagons, and the smell of fresh-cut wood. But Lacquin's success was tied to the trees, and once the forests were cleared, there was no reason to stay. By the 1930s, the timber boom had ended, and the people moved on. Buildings were abandoned, the mills shut down, and nature began its slow takeover. Today, Lacquin is almost completely gone. What's left are scattered foundations, rusted metal, and bits of railroad track lost beneath the brush. Hikers who visit the area, now part of Teodatin State Forest, often say they feel like they're walking through a ghost. What makes Lacquin so mysterious isn't just what's missing, but how completely the forest has reclaimed it. Trees now stand where houses once did. Trails follow the path of vanished streets. And unless you know the story, you'd never guess a whole town used to be there. Lacquin is a silent, powerful example of how fast human progress can disappear, and how the land never forgets. Number 1. Eckley Miners Village. Tucked away in Loausanne County, Eckley Miners Village is not your average ghost town. It's not completely abandoned, but it feels like a place frozen in time. Walking through Ekley is like stepping into the 1800s, when coal mining was king, and entire communities lived and breathed for the mines. This town was built in the 1850s to house miners working in the anthracite coal fields. Rows of simple wooden homes still stand, small, identical, and lined up along a narrow road. You'll find churches, a company store, and even remnants of coal breakers. It's all preserved, not rebuilt, giving it a raw, authentic feel that makes Ekley one of the eeriest and most well-preserved ghost towns in the country. What makes it mysterious is how quiet it is. There are no crowds, no loud attractions, just the sound of the wind and the crunch of gravel beneath your feet. Some say they've felt watched here. Others report cold spots and strange shadows in empty buildings. But Ekley's real power is in its silence. It tells a story without words of hard-working families, child labor, immigrant struggles, and the rise and fall of an industry that once shaped all of Pennsylvania. Today, it's a museum village, open to visitors. But it's not just history. It's an experience. One that leaves you wondering how many other towns like this were lost to time, and how close we are to forgetting them